Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode on the podcast. Today, we're back with a predictions video for the upcoming World Cup. It's going to be the biggest World Cup, um, especially because there could be a round of 32. Um, I'm unsure if there's been a round of 32 before, so it's going to be fun. So what's happened is we've all done our prediction for the groups to save us time. Otherwise, that probably would have put another 2 hours on top of
Yeah.
today. So it's good that I haven't thought about this. That we don't have to do it today because we've done it. So we're going to take it in turns, actually just analysing it and kind of our thoughts on who's actually progressed, and then we'll get to the knockout stage, which is the fun part where we're in a fighting tussle to see who goes through and who eventually will win the World Cup. Um, so um, let's start, guys. So I'm gonna start with Group A. So it was actually quite interesting because I think all of us chose for the third place team went through in Czech of Slovakia. So I put Mexico, Ivan put Mexico, and James put South Korea to win the group. So James, you put South Korea. Well, do you think they're going to be a dark horses then, as you put them first?
I don't think there'll be a dark horse to win the tournament, but one thing about South Korea, which I've sort of watched progressively over the last few years, is just they a lot of their players are starting to come to European football. There's a lot of experienced players that are in some top European clubs or have been in top European clubs. Obviously, we know of one particularly experienced player who's now in the MLS, and that is Heung-min Son, who used to be with Tottenham. I believe he's been picked for the squads this year, and you can always rely on him for the goals. And you've also got Lee Canning from Paris Saint-Germain, who we're quite familiar with. There was a couple of players that I'd seen, Kim Min Jae from Bayern Munich. So there's growing experience in European football with a lot of these South Korean players, and I do believe that they are an up and coming footballing nation. And I do believe that maybe at some point a few years down the line they will be a lot more of a competitor, and I think that they are progressing, and I do think that they will be quite surprising in the group. So that's why I've backed them to win this group. I know that's not the overall result that we've got here, but I'll be keeping an eye on them
Yeah.
in this tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give a little bit more perspective on Mexico, being Mexican American myself, but also in the United States. Mexico has more support sometimes in certain parts of the country than the United States does, particularly in places like California, where I live, where there's a huge Mexican American population. So, with the games primarily in Group A being in Mexico, Mexico, of course, will have home support. But in the games not involving Mexico, South Korea will also have some support from traveling supporters as well as some of the locals, because in 2018, it was South Korea beating Germany 2-0 that helped both nations, South Korea and Mexico, advance out of the group. So they haven't forgotten about that. And of course, we'll get into the knockout rounds, but there's a good chance that South Korea could land in a game that takes place in Los Angeles, where there's a huge Korean population as well. So both these teams, they have a good chance to get out of the group, but I think Mexico have a little bit more in terms of overall talent, as well as the home crowd that'll help them make the difference to top the group.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I went with Mexico for the reason being because they're one of the hosts. I feel like when you're a host nation, um, you do okay in tournaments. It hasn't always been the case, unfortunately, with Qatar, for example. Yeah, Qatar last year, 4 years ago. But yeah, so regardless, them two have gone through on our predictions anyway, and maybe a long time ago we would have put the Czech Republic higher than in third place. Maybe like 10 or so years ago, Czech Republic were doing so good in World Cups, and they were probably the dark horses in World Cups. But now that you've got the South Koreas, even the Mexicos, they're not as much underdogs anymore. They used to be, but they're not anymore. But then we've got South Africa for their first World Cup and seems like forever since they probably hosted it, I think. Um, and yeah, and they got the host game. They, they got the first game, and um, we don't have hope for them. We don't have much hope for them.
Here's a question for you all. With South Africa returning to the World Cup, will their fans be bringing the vuvuzelas?
I think they might have to just to keep
Yeah,
tradition. Maybe just for that one game against Mexico, because I'm not sure if it's happened before. I think this might be the first time we'll have the home and away of Mexico versus South Africa in this case being opening games for the World Cup. I don't think that's happened before because for that to happen, you need to have two teams host the World Cup, and then for those exact teams to be in the same group and then both be the opening game. So it's definitely a first.
yeah. We just don't know how South Africa are going to do, really. That they could prove us all wrong. Um, but yeah,
It did
so
cause a nasty shock last time I saw them play, which was in the African Cup of Nations a couple of years ago. I was in Morocco for that, and they were playing against Morocco, and everybody expected Morocco to win that game, and Morocco got beaten 2-0 by South Africa.
yeah. Ivan says Lyle Foster's their only Premier League player, which is a bit unfortunate because he got relegated. But yeah. But so who's going to do Group B?
I'll do Group B. So for Group B, we have got in total, we put Switzerland to come first, unanimously. We put Canada to come second, with the exception of no, we all put Bosnia to come third and Qatar to come fourth, I believe. So we all agreed with the outcomes of that. Switzerland, I think, is a team to watch. I think with the Swiss teams, there's a lot of players that we're going to recognise, and I think that they're a team that they've caused a few upsets over the years. I seem to remember a few years ago in the Euros, they beat France on penalties. Am I correct in thinking? They're not a team to be underestimated by any standards. Um, the Canadians, well, there's going to be a few familiar names again to us in Europe. Jonathan David playing up front, Alphonso Davis at left back, that we're all familiar with at Bayern Munich. And now Bosnia, I don't know if any of you guys can fill in, but we've obviously got Edin Dzeko, who used to play for Manchester City, who has been selected to represent his country again um, for this World Cup. And they're one of those teams where I think a lot of people write them off on the basis of the fact that they only know like one or two players from that country. But I would not put it past them to cause a bit of a surprise. We did actually, we'll come to this a bit later, but we did have them to progress. And the Qataris, I think, although that they are a developing football nation and they are assembling a um, much better foundation to build their national team, I think that they're going to be a little bit out of their depth. I think it's still a little bit too early for Qatar as a country. But we're seeing them return for the second time in a row as host previous time, and it'll be good to see how much they've improved this time.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially from the last World Cup, Canada were unfortunate. Their group was horrid that they were in, and they showed that they had so much fight, and they were unfortunate that they didn't get through. So I feel like this time they've got a much better group for them, and I think they'll progress, and they're one of the host nations as well, so that helps a little bit. Um, yeah, and I agree with what you say about Switzerland. So yeah, I feel like predictions wise, this is probably one of the easiest groups to kind of say because I think we all want when we do the predictions, we all think of what could happen, but sometimes, like we mentioned about South Africa, we want maybe another team that we don't think is going to do it good. It happens every World Cup, doesn't it? Like a team that you never think is going to do well does. And like Switzerland, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure it was the Euros or the World Cup we got them, and it was a very tight and cagey match, and we just about beat them, England, and it was it was so close. Years ago, England used to beat Switzerland really easy, but just as recent times, Switzerland have got better and they stay in the game a bit longer. So yeah, I agree. We just don't have to just don't underestimate anyone. No one's easy.
Yeah, I agree. So Bosnia is one of four third place teams that they got 2 out of 3 votes to advance, and that ended up being just enough to get Bosnia to advance in our overall groups. And we're going to see another such case in Group C. So we have 5-time champions Brazil, fourth place from 2022 Morocco. We have Scotland returning to their first World Cup since 1998 and Haiti for just their second ever World Cup, first since 1974. So, interestingly, Mason picked Scotland to finish above Brazil and Morocco, but James and I we were in agreement, so that resulted in Brazil finishing top of the group, Morocco finishing second, Scotland finished third and had enough good results to advance as a third place team. Unfortunately, Haiti, this is a very difficult group. We just talked about how unlucky Canada were 4 years ago. Haiti have a similar luck here. Um, so my personal doubts with Scotland was that I would expect them to get 3 points from Haiti, but I just don't see where that fourth point is coming from against either Brazil or Morocco. And usually it takes 4 points to advance as a third place team. But Mason, I'm curious, how do you see Scotland doing well in this group?
I don't think Brazil are as good as people say. Um, because I've seen their team selection and it's a bit underwhelming. Who they've actually picked. They've picked a Neymar who is kind of past his time. They're not picking players that are in form like Joe Pedro at Chelsea. You'd think he'd get in the team. He never got in the team. And I don't know. I just feel Scotland. They've had a few World Cups now. Um, and Morocco had their good World Cup, I think, 4 years ago, didn't they? Where um, they did good. They were one of the dark horses. So I feel like Scotland could do this. That they will beat Haiti, hopefully, and you'd think they'll beat Morocco, and a draw against Brazil should be enough for them to win the group. Um, but yeah, I just feel like you could see this from them, and I think like Scotland will beat Brazil. About my words.
Scotland have had a few encounters with Brazil. They did have a famous win against the Netherlands, but back then Scotland needed a certain margin of victory over the Netherlands to advance. They couldn't quite get the margin. So, yeah, it's been a bit too long since we've seen the Tartan Army at the World Cup, and they figured to be well supported from traveling support, one of the best in the world, as well as some local fans as well. But speaking of locals, we're going to turn it over to you, Mason, to talk about my nation's group, Group D.
So we've got in this group USA, Australia, Turkey, and Paraguay. USA, we've all said them to go through. So I said them to win the group. Ivan actually said Turkey to win the group, and James said USA. Um, so USA go through on unanimous decision. I actually put Australia second, but that wasn't enough, unfortunately, because James and Ivan put them bottom of the group. Um, and I often put Turkey, James put Turkey, so that's meaning Turkey goes through. Um, so yeah, and Paraguay get the tie break, so go through in third place. So it's a very interesting group actually. Like Australia, like Paraguay. Paraguay haven't done well in a while in a World Cup as well, so it's going to be interesting if that is if that's what happened. So I think it's going to be really difficult between Australia and Paraguay, really. But I think America, USA should win the group, as you guys have said.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. So you think Ivan Turkey are going to be the winners of the group? Why?
Yeah. It's
Why do you think
interesting. I
that?
think maybe we're more pessimistic about our team than maybe other people evaluate our teams. I mean, that's what's happening here. But I think the United States, they haven't been done favors by their media, and I think that's something you in England can relate to that. You got Roy Keane, we got Alexi Lalas. They were very arrogant when it came to the day of the draw, thinking Turkey, Paraguay, and Australia were going to be an easy group to top, and that is simply not true. Turkey, especially, they have some world-class players in Arda Güler and Kenan Yildiz, and a foundation of some other solid players from, if they're not from their domestic league, they're from other top leagues around Europe. So I think pound for pound, when you look at the players, I think Turkey will have a little bit more quality. And while I could see the USA picking at least 4 points out of their matches against Paraguay and Australia, I don't see them doing better than a draw against Turkey. And 5 points, it was enough for the USA to top their group in 2010, but it's not going to be enough, I think, in this occasion where I think Turkey have a bit more firepower to break through the solid defense of Paraguay. And Australia, they're always very tough as a unit, even when their individual talent isn't quite there. That's going to be tough to beat. But the way things worked out, because you put Paraguay fourth, Mason, that actually doomed Paraguay from advancing as a third place team. So this is one of the four groups that we have only two groups advancing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Like how it's all done, how it's all done. But before we go to James, as we've done now, the host nations, so Canada, Mexico, um, all three. So who do we think is going to progress the furthest out of the host nations? So America, Mexico, and Canada. So who do we think?
I mean, it depends on how it works out later on in terms of like the brackets and how they are
True.
drawn in the knockout rounds. Um, I think that the USA is a team that is growing and developing, and I think that they have definitely got a chance to progress quite far. I'm keeping one eye on the Canadians, though. I think a lot of people are underestimating them.
I think it's going to be a race between Mexico and the United States. I think that there's a chance that all three host nations get knocked out in the same round, be it the round of 16, should the Canadians advance that far. Um, I definitely seen that growth in football culture within the United States. I know we call it soccer, but when the United States hosted the World Cup in 1994, it helped establish Major League Soccer 2 years later. I was born in 1995, so I was lucky that even though historically the United States has been about American football, basketball, baseball, that I grew up in a time where that really shifted in soccer. Like, that kind of coincided as well as that shifting culture worldwide with football, with the Premier League was established in 1992. So a lot was going on to really grow the sport globally and in the United States specifically. So it's going to be interesting to see how this tournament unfolds compared to 1994, where there's more of a spectacle, the Diana Ross of it all, playing in these wacky stadiums like Pontiac Silverdome. There's still a few interesting venues. All of the United States venues are NFL stadiums as well as some do feature soccer teams like Atlanta United, for example. But yeah, it all depends on the knockout stage, and we still got 8 more groups to go.
Yeah. Okay. So James, um, you're up.
Right, so Group E. So again, in this group, I think we've all agreed in terms of the finishing positions of each of the groups, each of the teams. So let's go in reverse order this time. So we put Curacao to finish last in this group, and I believe is this their first appearance at a World Cup? On the basis that we've expanded it and they're one of they're one of the few smaller nations that are getting an appearance at the World Cup. Be curious to see how they do and see how they cope against the let's be honest, the tough opposition that they're going to have. For instance, who we've all picked for third, which is Cote d'Ivoire, or some of you may know as Ivory Coast. They were um, the reigning champions of the African Cup of Nations until the most recent, which was rather controversial. We won't go into that on this video, I'm sure. But I have seen them play, and again, they're a side that a lot of people underestimate. But I think
Didier
the
Drogba.
back in the days of Didier Drogba, I always used to love watching the African Cup of Nations when he was about. Kolo Toure, I believe, was and Yaya Toure, I believe, was Ivorian as well. Yan Diomande as well, who is currently in their squad from RB Leipzig. But for second place, we've all gone for Ecuador. Again, this is another growing footballing nation. Very familiar names. We've got Moises Caicedo, Estupinian, who did play for Brighton, I believe now plays for AC Milan. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, so there's a few names there which we'll be familiar with. I feel like I'm missing a name as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the clear favourites to progress and to win the group are Germany. We we know a lot of the German squad. Julian Nagelsmann is now a very experienced manager, and I think he can get them to gel together and become quite a competitive team at this World Cup. I don't think they're going to win it, but I don't.
In You have a complete team in terms of how they stack up against Ecuador and Cote d'Ivoire, whereas you see Cote d'Ivoire, they have a lot of talent in attack in particular. Ecuador, they're more solid at the back. Half their back line compete in the Champions League final in Pacho and in Capie. And then they gave up the fewest goals in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying, fewer than Argentina or Brazil. So with Ecuador, if you're going to beat them, you're probably only going to beat them scoring 2 goals or less, more likely 1 goal, and hope that you can keep them out. So it was 2 out of 3 that we picked Cote d'Ivoire to advance, and that was enough for them to make it to our bracket.
Yeah, so I think how it all ended up was the easiest options, like um Quarico. Um, we don't know them, so they could surprise us all and win the group. So we never know. But realistically, Germany in past years haven't done too well in the group stage. They haven't won it, and they're not known to winning it a lot like they used to. So, um, but in this group, you'd be surprised if Germany didn't win it. Um, but they could go out. They could go out to an average side in the knockout stages. What has happened a few times. Um, I think it happened to Japan. I think Japan beat them. I think last time. I think.
Yeah,
Um,
in the round of in the group stage in 2022, that's how Japan ended up topping the group and Spain finished second.
yeah, but
So I'll bring up Group F then. It consists of Netherlands, the best nation yet to win the World Cup, Japan, perhaps a dark horse candidate, Sweden managed to qualify despite being bad in their qualifying campaign. Shout out UEFA Nations League, and then Tunisia. So we were in agreement with Sweden finishing third and Tunisia finishing fourth, which means Tunisia is eliminated. 2 out of 3 people selected Sweden to advance as a third place team, so that's sorted. The difference was I picked Japan to top the group over the Netherlands, but I was outvoted there. James and Mason picked the Netherlands to top the group. So as the outlier, I'll explain my reasoning with Japan. So yes, they topped their group before with Spain and Germany and Qatar, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee they're going to top the group this time. But specifically, I see them matching up well with the Netherlands. I know there's some concerns with the players that are missing due to injury, mainly Kaoru Mitoma and Takumi Minamino. Those are going to be some big misses for Japan, but one area they've improved since the last World Cup is their depth. Japan really doesn't uh, draw too many of their national team players from the J League anymore, which is still a really good league. One of the exceptions being Yuto Nagatomo, which looks set to be at his fifth World Cup in a row. But the fact that they have so much depth, all playing in leagues in Europe, many of them in the top five leagues. You have some that play for Celtic, you have some that play in Belgium. I think it goes to show that they are their plan to become a powerful footballing nation that was set since the 90s, the professionalization of their domestic league, it's coming to fruition. I believe they have a goal to win a World Cup by 2050. And a big step in the right direction for them would be to see them get to a quarterfinal. Could it be this time? We'll see. But I think Japan will give the Netherlands a lot that they can handle. But the Netherlands themselves, they're a very good team. They're very Premier League based teams. It seems like the Benelux nations, Netherlands and Belgium, they love having players come over to the Premier League. It could go either way between those two, but we have Netherlands finishing top.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I can see Japan winning the group. I can see it being very tight between Japan and Netherlands. Um, Sweden, I think they should be one of the best, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not. Because they're not great, are they? So they only got here, like Ivan said, via Nation League qualification, which I personally believe shouldn't be the case. I feel like you should go through the normal protocols to get qualified. Um, I just think it's a gimmick kind of way to get through because they were terrible, wasn't they, in the actual World Cup? Um, I think what they get 1 or 2 points the whole time, so it just proves how lucky they were to get here. So yeah, Tunisia, it's actually once in a lifetime that England don't get them in the World Cup. So so it's actually good that we don't have them. As much as we enjoy beating them, um, they're not as bad as maybe as they look now. They're okay, but I think easily, yeah, they finished fourth. But
That's the thing. Is that I think that with Tunisia is that I think they can be a good side, but I think they're just going to be a little bit out of their depth in this instance.
Yeah, I think Tunisia, they have some attacking talent coming through the ranks. Burnley is actually going to be somewhat well represented at this World Cup. Hannibal Mejbri is probably their best player. He'll be there in midfield. But I think, yeah, you should just poke a few more holes in their squad compared to the other three teams. I think we're kind of expecting Sweden's talent to rise to the occasion. Emil Holm will be injured, so that's a big low for Sweden's back line. They still features Hyen, who's a center back from Atalanta, among some other players. But yeah, I think Sweden will do just enough to advance ahead of Tunisia, and that would bring us to Group G, which would be Masons.
yeah, so Group G, we've got Belgium, Egypt, New Zealand, and Iran. So it's a very interesting group, very widespread between every team. Uh, will this be Mohamed Salah's last World Cup? Quite possibly. Um, but yeah, so we've all gone for Belgium to top the group, which they are. They're always decent, Belgium, aren't they? I'm very surprised. Like back when the Eden Hazard days, their team was brilliant. Like Witsel, Eden Hazard, there's so many good players. They still do actually, but like they Kevin De Bruyne now. So I feel like this group, like we've all said, they'll win. Like me and James have put Egypt to finish second, and Ivan's put Iran to finish second. So that means Egypt to go through. Um, and the third best team is Iran, but they don't unfortunately go through on best. So Ivan, do you want to talk us through your kind of choice is that?
Yeah, it's very splitting hairs between Iran and Egypt. New Zealand's always a wild card. Of course, one of the best World Cup trivia tidbits to share. New Zealand were the only team in the 2010 World Cup to exit the tournament undefeated, three draws and then eliminated in the group stage. But when it comes to Iran and Egypt, I feel like they're made up of mostly domestic-based players. They have a few key star players, but I think with Egypt, you see Marmoush and Salah, and you think, okay, they're better than anyone Iran has. But Iran do have a few players in, some reputable leagues as well. And I think that the baseline average Iranian player is probably just slightly higher level than Egypt. And Egypt has always been an enigma at the World Cup because they perform very well at AFCON. They have so many AFCON titles, but it hasn't really translated to the World Cup. But for this group, other than Belgium, none of these teams have made it out of the group stage in the World Cup before. And that has to be the case for one of these three teams as a second place finisher. But that's also why we don't have too much faith in a third place team getting out of this group. I think that two of Iran's games being played in Los Angeles, where there is the Persian diaspora there, is gonna play in Iran's favor. There is an Egyptian community as well, particularly in California and the West Coast, that could be supportive for them as well. But I think that Iran has had a slightly more positive World Cup history. They can draw on that a little bit more, but I could see Egypt finishing second in this group as well. If there's ever a group for Egypt to break that duck in World Cup and to get out of this group, it's got to be this one.
Absolutely is. I think with Egypt, they're not going to get a better opportunity. I don't think to progress to the knockouts of a World Cup. Not just because of the fact that they've expanded the teams, but also I think it's because I think that they haven't got the toughest group in the world. I mean, Iran and New Zealand aren't they're not mugs, quite frankly. They are still going to pull up a fight, and especially the Iranians. I think that they're going to be, for probably reasons other than football, they're going to be up for it. So I mean, you think that with the quality that they have up front, that they should be able to get the results that they need to progress. So it's going to be interesting to watch them. And the thing with Belgium, they will be clear favourites to qualify. I don't necessarily think that they have improved as much as a team to go the distance in the tournament, but I think compared to who they're going to be up against, I think it's highly expected they're going to progress.
Yeah.
So if we're ready, then we'll progress to Group H. So once again, this is a group where we've all agreed on the finishing positions of each of the teams. So we've got Spain to top the group, and I think if and correct me if I'm wrong in any of you guys thinking differently, I actually think Spain could be one of the teams to watch in terms of winning the tournament. I think that they are going to be one of the favourites going into this tournament. They're a very well drilled team. They are the current European champions, which is bitter to say, obviously being from England, but um, oh yeah, they are one of the better teams to watch. So I think that that's going to be quite interesting to see how they progress, and particularly how they're going to cope with the tougher opposition as we progress into the knockouts. Uruguay I've put in because actually think that I don't know. I get the impression that there's going to be a lot of. I think the South Americans are going to do well in this tournament. I think that they're going to be very, very used to the climate as well. And I also believe that Uruguay, on the whole, have got a good squad, both defensively and offensively, a very well balanced squad in order to get the points that they need. Saudi Arabia is a country obviously very up and coming in the footballing world, and they're investing very heavily into their football. We've had the growth of the Saudi Pro League over the last few years, with a lot of their teams that have been selected for the national team having mixed with the world class players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Sadio Mane, Al Hilal, Al Ittihad, Al Nassr, and all the experience that they're going to get from that and all the training, I think is going to is going to bode well for them. And as Ivan has just advised me, they are the sixth amongst representatives at the World Cup, followed by the MLS. It's going to be very interesting to see how they cope. Cape Verde is another one of those countries who are the newcomers to the World Cup, and it'll be a nice surprise if they do get a good result. We don't know too much about them, so it'll be quite fascinating to see how they do. Obviously, expectation wise, we're not expecting much of them at all. That's why we've put them to finish last. But let's hope they prove us wrong and let's see if we get a surprise.
I think that third place position is open for Cape Verde to beat Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia sacked their manager very soon before the World Cup is set to begin. Their current manager will have had just a few months to get his tactics and vision across to the Saudi players. And they haven't looked that great in their friendlies in March and June, whereas Cape Verde, a lot of their players play throughout the Portuguese league pyramid. They have a player from the Irish league. They have a player from Major League Soccer. It's a very interesting team, and they have that kind of freedom knowing that, hey, if they get a point in the World Cup, let alone three, like that's a bonus for us. But I think this is probably one of those groups where the gaps between these teams are pretty solidified. Even between Spain and Uruguay and some previous iterations of Uruguay, I could see a world where they could top a group, if both the top teams finish 7 points and then it's on goal difference. But they haven't looked consistent under Marcelo Bielsa. They lost 5-1 to a rotated United States team back in November, but I think since then they've kind of solidified a little bit more. But I think it would be a cataclysmic failure if they finish lower than second.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. As like, I think Spain would definitely. I was asked actually the question before we started today. Um, who do I think is going to win the World Cup? And it was Spain. I think especially with a lot of these countries who benefit from this type of weather, well, actually, this World Cup will benefit them as well. Um, like so, like for some, they have a little bit of an advantage. But for Spain, yeah, Uruguay, is it? You just don't know with them. They were really good back in the day with Luis Suarez and players like that. But maybe not so much now. But you just see the group, and you can't see a world where they don't qualify. But as being probably a neutral, well, most of us being a neutral in this group, would probably want them to fail. So where we yeah. Saudi Arabia were good last World Cup, but maybe not so this World Cup. It happens. It happens to a lot of countries. One World Cup they have the best World Cup ever, like Morocco. Um, so yeah, we'll just wait and see. But I think Ivan, you've got the next group.
Yeah, we just finished talking about one World Cup contender in Spain. Just now, the full-time whistle has blown in La Coruña in a friendly, and Iraq have recorded a 1-1 draw against Spain. Somewhat rotated team. Joan Garcia was in net, so he's not expected to start for Spain, among some other uh, rotations there, but still, any Spain is a fantastic result for Iraq. So that is actually a pretty good transition to get to Group I, which features Iraq. And, maybe that will raise some eyebrows going into the World Cup. We have all put Iraq in fourth, and we have all put France in first. And where I thought the intrigue was going to be was who else would finish second out of Senegal and Norway. You can make an argument for either one. This is one of the strongest groups here. But interestingly, we were all aligned still. We all had Senegal second, Norway third, Norway advancing as one of the best third place teams. Surely, whoever that third place team is in this group, even if it's Iraq somehow, will have done enough to advance as a third place team. Both Senegal and Norway have dark horse potential. Senegal made it to the AFCON final, and Norway, they look like the most improved team. like from not making a World Cup since 1998 to now. They're led by Holland and Odegaard. They have several other good players as well, like Rierson. Uh, they could be a surprising return to the World Cup that goes pretty far. Uh, anyone else have thoughts on this strong Group I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, you go, Mason, first.
Um. Yeah. I think Iraq is like is an unknown, isn't it? Like we don't know much about them. But seeing like what you said about the draw against Spain, regardless of what Spain's side it is, they're still drawn against Spain. So you just don't. You just can't say anything, can you? But Norway, yeah, it was really difficult to put Senegal above them. But I feel like Senegal in previous years have been like the best African side, really. Um, so Norway, I definitely think it'll be very tight. I don't think Senegal will be too far in front of Norway. It's just gonna be, I think, when Senegal play Norway, that'll probably be the defining game to maybe who finishes second in this group.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, talking about the friendly earlier with Iraq, I mean, that's obviously going to give them a lot of confidence going into the tournament. And let's see what they bring to the table. But again, going back to first place, I think France is definitely the clear favourite to win the group and is actually going to be one of the favourites, as Ivan said, to win the tournament. I'm sure we'll speak a bit more about them later on. But um, in relation to Senegal and Norway, this was the group I struggled the most to pick the second place. I was in a bit of a toss up between do I go with the experience of Senegal with their AFCON winning team and the experienced players that they have and that winning mentality that they've got, or do we go with the up and coming exciting team in Norway who have obviously got the talent from Erling Haaland, um, Odegaard. I even believe is Christian Norgard, or is he Danish?
He's Danish.
He's Danish. I keep getting them mixed up, but is I believe that they also have a Premier League centre back as well.
Christopher Ajer from
That's it,
Brentford.
Brentford. But also, I think the depth from Norway as well is something to be talked about because we talk about Haaland, we talk about Odegaard. You also got the likes of Alexander Sorloth from Atletico Madrid, who will bring a lot of experience with him as well. So if it goes the other way and Norway finish second against other than Senegal, I would not be surprised. But on this occasion, I think we had to go with the experience, which is with Senegal.
Yeah, and I apologize. I jumped the gun there a little bit. It was halftime. Spain won, Iraq won, which is still impressive so far. But yeah, that was an eye-catching, friendly result as of halftime. So maybe we'll get an update in 45 minutes. But that will lead us to Group J, Mason.
Okay, so Group J, we've got reigning champions Argentina, with Austria, Algeria, and newcomers Jordan. Um, Really, I don't have anything about Argentina winning the tournament this time around. Um, I think it was rather nostalgic than winning last time, but I think they'll be up there. But I don't think they'll win it this time. I might be wrong, but I don't know. I still don't think their team was even the best team in the tournament last time. I just think the draw was very healthy to Argentina last World Cup. Um, but so we've all put Argentina to win it, and we've all put Austria to go through as well, and we've all put Algeria, but they don't advance as the best team. So and then we've all put Jordan not at the bottom. Um, so yeah, it's we don't know how Jordan are going to be, so it's another unknown.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on these teams. So the problem with Algeria when I made this prediction is a similar one with Scotland, I thought, is like I could see them getting the 3 points against Jordan. And in fact, I'll be at the Algeria versus Jordan game at Levi Stadium in San Francisco Bay Area, one of the few affordable World Cup games. But I didn't see how they would get enough of a result against Austria, be a goal difference, be getting a point, whatever, to be one of those third place teams. However, since we've made these predictions, Algeria, of course, have beaten Netherlands 1-0 in Rotterdam, which is an impressive result, even if Netherlands They were resting a few players. I mean, they started Virgil van Dijk. They started a few other good players, and they had a goal ruled off. So Algeria might have a bit more in there to compete in this group, but I do think this is one of those groups where the teams aren't quite as exciting besides Argentina. Similar to Belgium's group, you kind of think, okay, top one of the team has to finish second. We're not kind of looking at them as a third place team to advance. But Jordan, they did finish second in the last AFC Cup behind Qatar in that final. So Jordan, they will be confident in themselves, but this will be a tough situation for them in their first ever World Cup. So Group K would be James.
Okay, so Group K. So if there is a little bit of a difference here. So what we've done is that we've all put Portugal to progress as the winners of the group. And I think quite honestly that is that they shouldn't be too much of it shouldn't be too difficult for them to progress it. But Colombia are also a good side, and we've all put them to come second. Now, Ivan, you've put the Democratic Republic of the Congo to come third, whilst myself and Mason have put Uzbekistan, and then likewise the other way round, myself and Mason put Democratic Republic of the Congo to come fourth, whilst Ivan put Uzbekistan fourth. We'll come to that in a moment. But I think with Portugal, I actually think that again, this could be one of the teams that will be one of the favourites to win the tournament, as long as, and this is one thing I've said about Portugal for quite a long time, if they don't build this team around Cristiano Ronaldo, I think they are more likely to win this tournament because they have built up a very strong midfield. They've got a very strong defense. They need to. Ronaldo needs to be a player. Now they've selected him to be in the tournament. He needs to evolve around the team, not the team evolve around Ronaldo. I've said that for a few years now, and I think as long as Portugal do that, they're within a very good chance. Um, Colombia, they've always they tend to do quite well coming out of the groups in the World Cup, especially in the recent years, if I'm not mistaken. And I think another South American team progressing, I think is going to be quite likely. But let's bring in Ivan on his thoughts about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, because I'll be quite honest, my knowledge of them is not the best, and I'm sure he's got a justification.
Well, I think your knowledge might be better about the DR Congo than you might realize because a lot of players have recently declared to represent Democratic Republic of the Congo. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Axel Tuanzebe, Noah Sadiki, these are all Premier League players. These are players that have grown up in England or elsewhere in Europe, perhaps France. But with the recent FIFA rules, which we saw that a little bit in 2022 with Ghana drawing from some of their diaspora, Naki Williams, for example. Now the DR Congo, they're up there with Curacao and Cape Verde being able to benefit from that and to bring in players. Haiti did this too. And I think that I see DR Congo having more players with big game, big European game experience. That if we're splitting hairs, which I think we are between them and Uzbekistan, they have a former Roma forward whose name escapes me, and they have Kushanov of Manchester City. But I think DR Congo have a bit more depth beyond that.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't actually know those players play for DR Congo.
Neither did
Um,
I.
um, and Tron Davies played for Ipswich, so I didn't even know.
You of all people should know, Mason. Come on.
Yeah, he abandoned us. He wanted to go to play for Burnley. He wanted to go for
Yeah.
Burnley to get relegated. But yeah, the reasoning I put up Afghanistan is from what I've heard.
Uzbekistan.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna be like that. Luckily, for my pronunciation, I don't think they progress, so I don't have to say them again. Um, I heard that they're actually pretty decent, so I just put them third, knowing my horrible history about them. I don't really know much about them, but I don't know. They just sounded all right. A different team that we haven't really seen before, so um, it's gonna be hopefully as the neutral in this group. I hope either Portugal, Colombia flop, so yeah, either DR Congo or can't even pronounce it, but
Uzbekistan, they looked really good in a rain-soaked friendly in Edmonton, Canada, where Canada ended up winning 2-0. But it was a really hard fight. Uzbekistan had a number of chances to score, take the lead against Canada. Uh, Uzbekistan have been one of those AFC teams that they've just missed out on either AFC qualification or missing the intercontinental playoffs that they finally broke through with this expanded format, and it'll be interesting to see how they do. And last but not least, we'll have Group L here. So this, of course, features the three Lions, England, as well as some familiar foes, Croatia and Panama, and then you have Ghana, which they're a familiar foe of the United States. But now it's been two World Cups on the bounce that Ghana and the United States paths have not crossed. Now England can take a crack at them. So we all agreed England finished first. Then we all agreed that Panama would finish fourth. Now, interestingly, Panama is ranked 33rd in the FIFA rankings. Take that for what you will. Ghana is probably the most underrated team in the FIFA World Rankings. They did miss out on AFCON, so that hurt their chances to boost their rankings going into the World Cup. So where we differed is James and I picked Croatia to finish second over Ghana. Mason, you picked Ghana over Croatia. But either way, we had the third place team advancing. So Ghana will advance as a third place team. But I'm curious, we'll hear from you, Mason, why you had Ghana above Croatia. And then I'd love to hear from both of you what you think England's chances are.
um, I put Ghana above Croatia because I just don't think I think Croatia had their time in the World Cup. They got to the final, got battered by France. Um, I think that was the World Cup. I'm not sure if that's the World Cup or the Euros. Um, but still, I think Ghana will do it above Croatia. I think England will beat Croatia. And then it just comes down. I think everyone's going to beat Panama, so it's just coming down to the other games when you don't get to pick England. So that they won't think about it like this, the other teams, but they should. That they should think about it. We'll probably lose to England. We'll probably beat Panama. So realistically, it's Croatia and Ghana. They have to beat one another to get that second spot. Um, but it's no it's not like we England are used to getting Croatia, right? And we're used to getting Panama. So realistically, this group ain't fun for England because, in a sense, we know what we're going up against. We played Ghana very few times, but we played them, I think, once or twice, maybe in friendlies. Um, but yeah, I feel like England should win this group, but I feel like we could get a better route if we don't win this group.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think England would be favourites going into this group, and it does seem like that in every single tournament or every single World Cup, we seem to be playing against Croatia and Panama. I don't know what is going on with the draw, but it seems to be like we seem to have formed some sort of footballing allegiance. But anyway, we look forward to that opposition yet again. Croatia is one of those teams where they might not look the most exciting on paper, but they're always incredibly well drilled and they are efficient. And I do think that they're always going to be a tough team to play against. And in the past, when England have played against them, whether we've won or whether Croatia have won, it's always been close. And that will be quite a key game in this group. Ghana is one of those where they're making a bit of a bounce back, and obviously they've got an exciting player in the team in Antoine Semenyo, who sort of burst onto the scene with Bournemouth and is now at Manchester City. Um, I'm not too familiar with how they are defensively. But I do think that they're going to fall short just slightly, maybe for perhaps the lack of experience as well. I think they're a team that we could start to see more often compete at these tournaments, and I would be very shocked if they're not at the next AFCON. But we'll see with that. And yeah, Panama is one of those teams where we always come up against them. They never make it easy, but I think that the everyone else would expect to get 3 points with against them. The thing with England is that I think in terms of personnel wise, I don't think we're going to be the favourites. But I think what will be in our favour is I think we might have a systematic advantage. I think that Thomas Tuchel is going to instill a system which is going to be very hard to beat. And I think that that is what he's always done with pretty much every club team that he's been at. And he's got experience of winning the biggest trophies in Europe. So if he can assemble a unit which is going to be hard to beat and could be efficient in attack, I think we could be quite confident that we'll progress quite far in this tournament. I do want to say just before we move on, and I'm sure Mason will chip in with this as well, but there's a lot of players I think have been unlucky not to be selected for England. And depending on how we perform, we may be looking back at this. For example, Cole Palmer has not been selected to play for England. We've left out Lewis Hall, who, to be honest, in the left back position, hasn't faced too much competition, I would say. And then you've got Phil Foden as well, who is now a very experienced player in Manchester City's attack. And I think that perhaps we could get to a stage where we are missing the unpredictable creative player in Cole Palmer who can change a game in a matter of seconds. But we'll see with what we've got, and if Thomas Tuchel can get the best out of what we've got, then who knows? And we can we've got to believe that we can do it.
Yeah, I do think the team when we saw it at first, like Harry Maguire was one that should definitely have been on the plane. That's for sure because the defense is okay, but you're paying John Stones played 4 games for Man City all season. Um, and like I would have actually took Luke Shaw as well. I know Lewis Hall, but Luke Shaw may not have had their best season in years, so take those Man United players with you. Like at least those two. Ivan Toney's gone surprisingly. I think he's gone for the penalties really than anything else. He's good at his penalties. So we get to the penalty shootout. I think that's the only reason he's there, and I do think they will monitor Harry Kane's minutes. So if we're winning, like if we're beating Croatia or Panama in the group stage games, they take him off and save him for the group stage games. So yeah, you got Anthony Gordon there as well, Anderson. So yeah, hopefully it all works out. But if it doesn't, there's going to be a massive uproar from England
Yeah.
on Thomas Tuchel's position even as England coach come the end of the tournament.
Yeah, I think there's always banter on social media between English football fans and American fans, but realistically, England always have a really good team, and when they do go far in tournaments, as much as there's a lot of pressure heaped on them to win something, particularly during the years of their golden generation, they kept just getting across a better team. Like there's no shame in losing to Ronaldinho and Ronaldo's Brazil in 2002, for example. Um, or Spain in this last Euros. Even the Italy in the 2020 Euros, that was a very good Italy team that inexplicably hasn't qualified for a World Cup before or after. But
Yeah.
uh, with England, I feel like it's always the selection drama that I think it sets them in an awkward tone. And it does feel like certain players, they get chances when they don't expect it. And then when they're actually an established player, they don't. The biggest example I can think of is Theo Walcott was very inexperienced when he was on the 2006 World Cup roster. And then when he's lighting up the Premier League for Arsenal in 2010, he's nowhere to be seen. So, yeah, there's always a few of those head scratching selections, but England, it's a testament to how popular the Premier League is, how much players they have available, including a few like Jude Bellingham that aren't bound by the Premier League anymore, that they have a few players playing in different leagues, different styles to bring that to the forefront.
Yeah. I completely agree. But now we've done all the groups, let's go to the knockouts. So that the favourite part of this, so for the first time ever, the round of 32.
Yeah.
Um, so what we'll do, we'll go in the same order, and then Ivan can keep on track of all the choices, and then work out who's going to play who going forward into the next round. So I'll start. So first of all, we've got Germany versus Czech Republic. So we could all vote. I would say that the person who actually says the game will go last and pick their choice. So the other two who we'll do it like that. So we'll start with you, James. Who do you think is going to win, Czech Republic or Germany?
I actually think this game will be tougher than it might look on paper. And the thing with the Czech Republic, I think they will put up a fight with the experience that they've got in their squad. But I think Germany will edge it with the quality that they have. I don't think it will be a whitewash. I don't think it will be a huge win. But I think Germany will do just enough to get over the line. I reckon it's going to be a 2-1 to Germany.
Yeah. Normally, I would say Germany wouldn't mind if it goes to penalties. I think we all know how ruthlessly efficient German national teams are in that category. But Czechia are one of two teams from the UEFA playoffs that qualified from winning back-to-back penalty shootouts. So, as long as Germany can take care of business in regulation in Boston in this one, I see Germany advancing to the round of 16.
Yeah, and I'm going to say the same. Germany to go through, but I do think it'll be straightforward for Germany. Really, if they lose, it'll be quite funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we all like to see Germany lose. I think that's one thing non-German football fans have in common.
Yeah. So James, your turn to pick.
Okay, so the next game, so we've got France versus Scotland, which will be taking place in New York. Now, I do think that the Scottish team over the last few years has grown and improved, and I think they are going to put up a fight. But I do think that France are going to be one of the favourites to win this tournament. So I reckon I don't think it will be a clean sheet. I will say that France will be advancing. I'd say I'm going to go with a 3-1 win to France for that one.
Okay. Um, I'm going to go for. I think this game's going to go to penalties. I think Mbappe's going to get sent off for violent conduct. And then I'm also going to say the Scotland manager will get sent off for raging in the penalty shootout because because Scotland advanced on penalties.
I'm just taking a moment to gather myself there.
I
Um,
was almost expecting you to say that Scott McTominay was going to get a hat trick.
Now, based on the hat I'm wearing, I wouldn't mind seeing that, but I'm gonna pick France to advance. I don't see it going to penalties. Uh, France, of course, they gifted the United States the Statue of Liberty, which will be overlooking this game at MetLife Stadium. France, I don't see them having too many problems. If Scotland were to advance, this would be the first time in their World Cup history that they got out of the group. That would be a success already, but I'm going to vote for France.
Okay. So yeah, I think you're next, aren't you, Ivan?
Yes, so we will head on down to beautiful Los Angeles for this one. We have the runners-up of Group A, South Korea, facing the runners-up of Group B, Canada. Because Canada failed to win their group, they don't get the opportunity to play a knockout game in Canada, so they have to go to what will be an away crowd atmosphere. It will probably be an 85% Korean crowd. That's a conservative estimate, I imagine. And that doesn't mean the other 15% is Canadian. It'll be like everyone else that isn't Korean. So, um, Korea have a history of getting to the top 16. I know now that will require a knockout victory, and South Korea haven't managed that since they hosted the World Cup in 2002. But Canada, like Scotland, they've never gone out of the group before. So, as much as I think Canada has some scenarios where they could make it to the round of 16, this could be one that goes to penalties. But I think South Korea, Son Heung-min has played in LA for the last couple of seasons. Uh, they are more experienced at this level. South Korea to advance is my opinion, but we'll pass it over to James.
Yeah, I think that's hard to disagree with there. I think although I'll be keeping an eye on Canada, I think they have improved over the last few years, and I think that they could be a team which will be quite interesting. I do think that South Korea are going to have too much of them at the end of the day. I think that South Korea will be winning this game. I reckon it's going to be. I reckon maybe like a comfortable 2-0 win. I think South Korea with the experience that they have and they're quite a well balanced team. So yeah, I think that's going to be a comfortable win for South Korea.
Yeah. Not that my vote would have any opinion on what's going to happen, but I'd say South Korea anyway. So yes, unanimous decision, South Africa. No, not South Africa, South Korea. um, to go through. So next we've got Netherlands versus Morocco, which is actually a tough game. Actually,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not an easy game. Um, I do think though Netherlands will have enough to go through. So that's my vote.
I will go ahead and it's always an upset in the round of 32 or the first knockout round in this case, since this is our first time having a round of 32. And I think Morocco match up well against the Netherlands. I don't think there's a huge drop in quality between the two squads. And I think Morocco, I don't see them going quietly into the night after their incredible 2022 World Cup. Doesn't mean they're going to go to the semifinals, but I think that in this case, Morocco advances. I think it's a 1-0 win in extra time. So that's one vote Netherlands, one vote Morocco. James will have the deciding vote.
I also think this is going to be a game which goes to extra time. I think Morocco are they are going to push Netherlands to the limit, and I think that the one strength which the Netherlands could have in this game, if they manage to utilize it with how they are set up, is their defense. They are coming into the tournament with, on paper, quite a strong defense, and some of like the most experienced defenders, some of the most experienced defenders in Europe. And I think ultimately, if Netherlands are gonna progress, I think that's what's going to get them there. Um, I actually think that Netherlands won't keep a clean sheet, personally. I think it's going to be 1-1 after 90 minutes, and I think Netherlands win 2-1 after extra time.
The Netherlands
All
are
right, so
through.
Netherlands will advance. I think this is our first split decision.
Okay, so what we've got next. So we've got Colombia and Croatia, and that'll be taking place in Toronto. Now, this one I think will be really interesting, but I think Croatia are going to have too much experience. I think that this will be a very cagey, um, not the most entertaining game in the world, but I'm going to go with a Croatia win and I'm going to go for a 2-1 win after 90 minutes.
Ah, okay. Um, so I'm gonna go for. I think this game will go to penalties. I do. I think this game's gonna go to penalties. I know Modric will get sent off in extra time. Um, and that will define the advantage for Colombia on the penalty shootout. So I do think Colombia, as England fans, we know we don't like Colombia because of how foul as they are. But I will say Colombia will go through. So this will be a split decision on Ivan's vote.
All right, so that leaves me with the deciding vote here. So I think that you can make an argument for either of these teams. I think Colombia. Even though I apologize, there's a emergency vehicle on my street right now. We'll give it a minute.
We're used to hearing it all the time in the UK, don't worry.
Think it's about to go away. Okay, now I can talk again. So there's not a lot to split between these two teams. Colombia, they don't have as many players in recognizable European teams as they used to. I mean, they do have not the Luis Suarez we think of. That one plays in Inter Miami for Uruguay. Well, not Uruguay this World Cup, but Luis Suarez, the Colombian player, he plays, I believe, for Sporting CP or Clube de Portugal. Uh, and then James Rodriguez, he technically plays in Major League Soccer, but he hasn't played actually all that much for Minnesota United, kind of taking the Gareth Bale approach, using MLS as a warm-up for the World Cup. But I think Croatia, as much as Colombia should be have a few conditions in their favor, the climate and the home crowd in Toronto, I do think Croatia, they just have enough experience with this core, and they have supplemented it with some other young players coming up, such as Nicola Mauro from Bologna. I think Croatia will advance just narrowly, maybe 1-0 extra time. So 2-1 vote, Croatia will advance. And that will bring me to the sixth game of this World Cup knockout stage. In Los Angeles, they'll be hosting another game very quickly after the one we spoke about. This will host Spain against Austria. And with all due respect to Austria, I don't think I have to go into too much detail. Spain to advance. Mason.
Um, the this game, unfortunately, Austria they will not have enough to get through on this one. But I do think David Alaba will get sent off. That will make Spain score the last deciding goal of the game. But yeah, it's going to be an easy win for Spain, that one.
Okay, first of all, before we go any further, Mason, how many red cards have you got for the rest of the games? Um, so now for yeah, for this game, Austria they could well end up being quite a respectable side, and quite a tough opposition. But I think Spain are just going to have too much for them, in all areas of the pitch. So I'm going to go for a 3-0 win to Spain, after 90 minutes.
So that means a unanimous decision of Spain going through to the next round, which means we move on to the United States. They who are going to be facing the third best team in Group B, Bosnia. So it's going to be it's a harder game than people think, but I'm going to start off and go with United States to go through. I think they have enough to go through on this one.
I guess I'll go next since this is my team here. I'd be very nervous about this game because, of course, we're aware of who Bosnia knocked out to get to the World Cup. The mighty Wales and the less mighty Italy. But also the player that sent them through to the World Cup in that penalty shootout. He was born in Wisconsin, Esmir Bakjarektovich. He came through New England Revolution in Major League Soccer, so storylines abound. But as much as I could see a world where Bosnia knocked the United States out for a premature demise, uh, I have to back my nation. I have to back, especially if they somehow win Group D, they're going to be playing in my home region of San Francisco. It's written in the stars for this one. I'd say the USA advance. I'll go 2-1 as Mir Baktarekovic will score for Bosnia, but Pulisic and Timothy Weah score for the United States.
Yeah, this will be a game which I think the United States will be looking forward to, and I think this would actually be quite a nice first knockout game for the home nation. Again, Bosnia and Herzegovina may well surprise us, but I do think that the USA have been a growing and developing team over many years now, and they are assembling a pretty healthy squad to go into the World Cup. I think the USA, although it'll be a close game, I think will edge this. I also think it's going to be a 2-1 win, and I'd be very, very happy to see Christian pull a six score again. As a Chelsea fan, he used to play against us. I wish he had stayed longer, but unfortunately, his injuries were a bit of an issue, and I'm hoping that he's managing to get more playing time.
He actually had a bit of a goal drought before he scored in the friendly win over Senegal this past warm-up period. He went the entire calendar year, the second half of the season with AC Milan without scoring a goal, but AC Milan had been dreadful as a whole. That will be something that will ail the likes of Rafael Leao as well going into this World Cup for Portugal. But uh, no better time to break a scoring drought than right before the World Cup.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us up to the eighth game of the round of 32. So this is interesting. So we have got Belgium versus Cote d'Ivoire. Now, Belgium, I think ultimately are going to have too much at the end of the day. Um, I think I think it'll be tight. I think Cote d'Ivoire are going to show up, but I think ultimately, like I said, I think the attacking quality that Belgium are going to have is just going to be a little bit too much. So I still think it'll be closer. I reckon it's going to be a 2-1 win to Belgium.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a pretty solid game, a pretty easy win for Belgium. Um, but going into this, would love an upset, but I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, Belgium to go through.
Selfishly, I would love an upset because, this winner will face the United States in the round 16. Again, no shade to Cote d'Ivoire. I'd rather face them than Belgium in the next round, but realistically, I think Belgium in Seattle, they're going to be the better team. And yeah, it may not be the golden generation anymore, but Romelu Lukaku, he got a goal in his game for Belgium that happened recently. Jeremy Doku is kind of bridging that generational gap, and Cote d'Ivoire just a notch below there. So I'll say a 2-0 win for Belgium in Seattle. And that will take us to game nine. So that will be the winner of Group C, Brazil, against the runner-up of Group F, Japan in Houston. And there's going to be massive support for both these teams. Probably an edge for Brazil in the Lone Star State from both Brazilian supporters as well as neutrals who love the Selecao. Um, Japan will have some neutral support as well. And there is a world where Japan can win this game. I do see at least one Asian or African team making it to the round of 16, if not the quarterfinals. There's going to be some opportunities for that in these last few games, but I think Brazil will find the goals, maybe from Igor, maybe from Martinelli, and they will advance. It'll be a thriller. Let's say 3-2. Brazil to advance.
Um, for this one, I think it's going to be quite a cagey game. I think Japan will have the best defense in the World Cup, and they will keep. It'll be 0-0. It's going to be a 0-0 to it'll go to penalties, and then Japan will stun the nation, stun every nation, and beat Brazil.
That's a bold prediction. Well, we'll remember that one if that one happens. But you know what I will say though, um, when I when I first saw this fixture, I thought, Japan have probably, whenever I watch them play, their work ethic off the ball and as well as on the ball is incredible. And I do think that although Brazil are going to have the technical edge, I do think that Japan are going to run them off the park for 120 minutes. I strongly suspect this game could go to extra time. But I do think in the end, I think Brazil will have enough to progress to the next round. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Brazil after extra time.
Okay, so Brazil will win. So next up we've got Ecuador versus Senegal, and I think it's actually a very difficult game. This isn't an easy one, but I do think Ecuador will have enough to beat Senegal. I do think out of the African teams, Senegal are one of the best, but I do think Ecuador aren't easy. So I'm going to go for an Ecuador win on this one.
James, you could go next.
Right. So, um, I might not make this easy for you, Ivan, but I am actually going to go for Senegal on this one. Because although Ecuador, I think, have got a very, very good team, and I just I think that the experience that Senegal have is going to work in their favour, and I think they're the more well balanced team out of the two. I think it will be a very low scoring game. I reckon this could even be like a 1-0 to Senegal. But that's what I'm going to go with on that one. I'm going to say Senegal.
Yeah, so the problem for Ecuador is other than Ener Valencia, who is still representing Ecuador, he made his World Cup debut in 2014, so he's been around for a bit. Uh, there's not consistent source of goals. Maybe that will be Kendry Paez one day, but he's more of an attacking midfielder than a striker. Um, I said that at least one African or Asian team will make it to the round of 16. And I think this is where it happens for an African team. I think Senegal will advance. Yeah, I think 1-0. Maybe it's Nicholas Jackson on counterattack. So next up will be James for game 11.
Okay, so we've got Mexico versus Sweden now, and that's in Mexico City, so the home support for Mexico. I do think this will be a tight game. The one issue I have with Sweden is the fact that I think that they are heavily, heavily, heavily reliant on their front line. I think that if Gyökeres or Isak don't have a good World Cup, um, then that's going to nullify Sweden quite quickly. Um, I actually think that this is where the road ends for Sweden, and I reckon Mexico will progress here. I'm going to say I actually think that this will be a Mexico win via penalty shootout.
Yeah, I could see that, even though Mexico, they don't have the greatest history with penalties, whether in regulation, thanks Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, set up by an Arjen Robben dive, or in a penalty shootout. I believe they lost to Bulgaria in the 1994 World Cup to a penalty shootout. But in this case, interestingly, both Mexico and Sweden have the same biggest weakness, goalkeeper. That is normally a strength for Mexico, especially if it could be strength again if Guillermo Ochoa decides to play like it's 2014 again. But our number one choice, Luis Malagan for Club America, would have been that guy had he not torn his ACL in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So we're back to Guillermo Ochoa once again for his sixth World Cup, fifth that he'll or fourth that he'll make an appearance in. But Sweden, I think they're even worse off when it comes to their goalkeeper situation. I believe their top choices play in the EFL Championship, where they used to have Robin Olsen, who was a backup in the Premier League, but still a Premier League goalkeeper. Um, I say Mexico win. For my heart rate as a Mexican, I would hope it would be 2-1 in regulation. And I think the goals would come from Julian Quinones and Alvaro Fidalgo. So Mexico has two votes. Mason.
Um, I think this is where Graham Potter gets the sack. Um, so I I completely agree with what everyone says. Mexico got to go through. This will unfortunately he either gets a sack or he'll resign from this because it's not good enough for Sweden standards, they should be at least getting to the quarterfinals. Realistically, I think that's probably the goal they probably set themselves. But yeah, I think Mexico will go through as well.
I disagree that Sweden, I don't think they believe themselves that they'll get to the quarterfinals. If they could win this game and maybe get to the round of 16, but when you qualify for the World Cup the way Sweden did, I think you'll take what you get. Um, but that brings us to game 12, and this will be in Atlanta. This will be England as winners of Group L against a third place team, Saudi Arabia. And I will let Mason go first.
So I do think England should win this game. Um, it's all dependent on. I do think England do rely on previous results in the group for the momentum, because if we look back on that previous World Cups for England, they haven't really lost in their group. Unfortunately, I think we had a friendly, or was it to Japan before the World Cup? We lost against them, and we do have two friendly coming up prior to this recording. So they will be very important going into the World Cup. But I think we'll beat Saudi Arabia. I feel like Saudi Arabia had a good World Cup last time. They did had some really good shock results, but I think that's where this is where it ends for them against England.
I see a world where I actually think Saudi Arabia will get the first goal. I don't know. I've looked at Saudi Arabia and like their attack and like the experience that a lot of the players have got playing for uh with the superstars that have joined the Saudi Pro League, and I think a lot of them have learned a lot from that. And I think and I've watched teams like Al Hilal play recently, and like the Saudi players they're very exciting. They've got a very good work rate, and I feel like England will progress, but I don't think it's going to be as convincing as it probably should seem on paper. I reckon England will progress 2-1 in the end.
Yeah. It will be difficult because I feel like Saudi Arabia will be very defensive in this game. And it's happened before in previous World Cups where we played teams struggled to break them down. And like James said, they'll probably go in front. And then it'll be a bit like, I forgot who you played. And remember when we was about to go out the World Cup? I think it might have been against Slovakia or someone. And Jude Bellingham scores right at the end of the game. So it could be that type of game.
I think that wasn't that the first knockout round of the Euros
Oh,
last
was
time.
it? Was it the
Yeah,
Euros? So yeah, I do think it'll be a similar kind of game to that if you're playing Saudi Arabia. But it depends how they play, in the groups.
Even though England are expected to advance, and I will pick England to advance here too, how they advance will determine how far they will go. If this is a scrappy game or they advance 1-0 on a Hurricane penalty in regulation, then there's going to be heaps of pressure and anxiety from the media and the fans that could be a dark cloud heading into the round of 16. I think it'll be probably a two-goal margin. Let's say Hurricane gets one, and then um, let's say Elliot Anderson. Why not? The 2-0 England advance.
Yeah. So next up we've got Argentina versus Uruguay. So that's a really good game. That's a really good game. But I do think Argentina will progress. I don't want them to though. I'd much rather the underdog win the game, and I'll be like that for any game. That's not England. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna go for an Argentina win.
Okay, I'll go next on this one. This is, of course, a big rivalry game. Not as intense as Argentina versus Brazil, but still pretty intense. These are the two nations with the most Copa America wins. Brazil hasn't quite uh, performed to expectation in that continental tournament historically, but this version of Uruguay has a few too many holes. I think their goalkeeper Fernando Muslera, it's a similar situation as Guillermo Ochoa or even Manuel Neuer, where it's like, are they going to be able to stop the goals they've stopped in past World Cups? And I have my doubts there. Um, there has been a lot made, probably more stateside, about Luis Suarez wasn't selected, but frankly, Luis Suarez hasn't even been consistently at the level of Major League Soccer at times. There's been games where he's cost Inter Miami games at the Major League Soccer level, and I feel like to play for Uruguay at a minimum, you have to be elite among Major League Soccer players. There's a midfielder, Sanabria, who plays for Real Salt Lake. He made the World Cup roster for Uruguay. So playing in MLS isn't the issue. It's just Luis Suarez near the end of his career hasn't been the same beast. And you can't afford to bring passengers to the World Cup. Everyone has to be expected to contribute, with maybe the exception of a third choice goalkeeper, but still. That being said, a lot is riding on Argentina. As much as Lionel Messi got that monkey off his back, he won the World Cup in 2022. Whenever it's your last World Cup, you want to go out on top. You don't want to go out early. And I think the players understand that. I think Argentina will galvanize around that and they'll at least get a step further.
One thing about Argentina, which I do think might help them might give them an advantage, is that I don't think that both personnel wise, with the players that they've selected and in the management, they've not really changed that much since 2022. There's going to be a lot of familiarity in their squads. That it's a well-oiled engine, and I think that they are still, even though they might not win it, I think they might still progress quite far in this tournament. I'm quite surprised, Mason, that you didn't say there was going to be a red card in this game. um, this will be quite a feisty game. I think there will be there's going to be a few scraps. I think there's going to be a lot of frustration. Um, but I do think that Argentina will win 2-0 in this game. I think
Yeah.
they're just going to be too much for Uruguay. Although Uruguay will put up a fight, um, I just think Argentina can have too much.
And that will bring us to the third to last game in this round, James.
Okay, so we've got Turkey versus Egypt. Now, if you asked me how I thought this game would go in 2022, like our previous tournament, I would have said Egypt would progress here. I think Turkey have grown a lot as a footballing nation. I think that they've got a very, very exciting few players in their team, and I think that Turkey are going to advance in this game. Absolutely, I think it's going to be a. I actually think I think this could be quite a high scoring game. I'm going to say 3-1 to Turkey.
Yeah, I also think Turkey will advance. Um, yeah, they've got better as the years have gone on. Years ago, you didn't think they would probably advance so far. So yeah, unfortunately, Mohamed Salah's journey at the World Cup is going to be out in the round of 32.
Which would still be the furthest Egypt have advanced in terms of reaching the knockout stage. Yeah, there's not too much more for me to add here. I think whoever gets out of this group besides Belgium, they're going to be sacrificial lambs for stronger opponents. Turkey, I don't see them having too much problems in this one, so they'll advance. And that will bring us to the penultimate game of this round, the Vancouver game between top of Group B Switzerland against the strongest of the third place finishing teams, Norway. And usually, when there's a third place advancing format, be it Euros or uh, the World Cup back in 1994, Italy in particular, they were a third place team that made all the way to the final. There's usually at least one that gets past the first round. So that's where I'm going with Norway pulling off the upset to advance. But we'll turn it over to Mason and then James.
Um, I think it's going to be a very difficult game. Um, I do, but I'm with Ivan on this one. I do think Norway are going to do it. I think that they'll they'll see it as an opportunity because they haven't been at the World Cup for so long. Um, and although Switzerland are no easy team, it could even go down to the wire. It could even go down to extra time and penalties. But I do think Norway will have enough. You're on mute, James.
I muted myself. Brilliant. Okay, right. So I think how this game is going to go is purely going to be dependent on how Switzerland set up defensively, because I think there is a lot of expectation on Norway with the attacking firepower that they have to be able to get the result here. I think that Norway will have too much in the end, but I don't think it's going to be straightforward. I think that this game could even go to extra time, and I think once the floodgates open, we'll then start banging in the goals. I reckon it'll be 3-1 to Norway in the end.
Okay. So this puts us on the last game of the round of 32. So Portugal versus Ghana. So this on paper, very easy game, but you just never know. You never know what to expect from Ghana. I love these African teams because they have so much energy and they're so always up for the games. So I do think it's going to be difficult. Portugal, I do think they should have enough, but it's like James said earlier. It depends how what they're planning for. Are they planning just to set it up for Ronaldo or players around him? Which should be his last World Cup, but you never know with him. He could go to his 50 at this rate. Um, but yeah, I'm going for Portugal to progress.
I'll go and then James will. So this is another one where it could be a little tricky when these two teams met in the group stage of the 2022 World Cup. Ghana didn't make it easy on Portugal, but this Portugal team has a much better midfield than it did 4 years ago. Portugal are going to suffocate the game. I think they'll keep a clean sheet, and whether it's a 1-2 or 3-0, Portugal advance.
That's the thing. I think with the midfield that Portugal have assembled together now with the likes of João Neves and Vitinha, I think that this is going to be a far more stable Portugal team. I think they're going to look to try and control the games a lot more. Um, and again, as long as, like we said before, um, Ronaldo can sort of slot in to um, play for a team that is sort of evolving now in a sense where they're moving on from him and he can add in the goals, that'd be fantastic. Um, I do think that Ghana, as much as they might put up a fight, I think Portugal are just going to have way too much. I think this is going to be a comfortable 3-0 win to Portugal um, in Kansas City.
And that concludes the round of 16. Let me just set the stage here based on those results, and then James will introduce the first matchup. So I'll go in reverse order there. So we have Argentina versus Turkey in Atlanta. We have Norway versus Portugal in Vancouver. Mexico City will play host to Mexico versus England. New York will host Brazil versus Senegal. The next challenge, the biggest challenge for the USA, will come in the form of Belgium in Seattle. We'll see yet another Spain versus Croatia matchup in Dallas. Then we have Korea versus Netherlands in Houston. But first up, it's probably the juiciest round of 16 matchup, James.
This is a very, very juicy matchup. We've got Germany versus France in Philadelphia. Now, um, I do think this is going to be one of the most exciting games to watch. I think that this is going to be one of those games which could be quite a high scoring game. I think both teams have got quite threatening attacking players. I think defensively, for Germany, though, this could be the area where it might let them down. I think France are going to advance. I'm going to say it's going to be an entertaining 4-2 win to France.
Okay. Um, at this stage, Kylian Mbappe's red card will be rescinded, so he'll be able to play again for this game. Um, so I feel like he'll be up for the challenge, and that means he's going to cruise a hat trick against Germany, and unfortunately Germany will go get humiliated in this game. And will lead to the manager resigning at the end of the World Cup. So yeah, France progress.
Yeah, it's going to be unanimous, even though I expect there to be fireworks. I think it'll be a thriller, probably a 2-1, maybe even a 3-2. I think that Germany will make it competitive, but France are a tier one contender. Germany's like tier two. Germany's used to being tier one, but not quite yet. And from their failures in the 2018 and 2022 World Cup, if Germany were to make it to the round 16, yeah, they'll be disappointed to get out this stage, but they got the toughest possible matchup against France. So they'll be like, what can you do? So France to advance, and then I'll start off the next round of 16 matchup. So we got a David and Goliath scenario here in Houston. South Korea versus the Netherlands. These are two teams where neither fan base is quite happy with their manager. Both of them have made some interesting tactical decisions, or their fans feel they hold their team back. And while I had Netherlands losing to Morocco, I view Morocco as a stronger opponent than South Korea. So I'm going to vote for the Netherlands to advance in this situation. We'll go to James next.
Yeah, I agree. I think with South Korea, although they are going to put up a fight and they're not going to make it easy for the Netherlands, I think the Netherlands will have just about enough to progress. But this is one of those games where I wouldn't be surprised if South Korea do progress as well. I think that they're not quite equally matched, but I don't think they're as far off each other as people think. I think that the Netherlands will have enough to progress. So I'm going to say 2-1 win to the Netherlands.
At this stage, not my vote matters, but I do think they'll go to penalties and South Korea will be winners.
So
Okay.
you will introduce the next matchup, Mason.
Okay, so we got Croatia versus Spain in Dallas, and I feel like it's going to be a bit of a cagey match, but I do think Spain will win quite comfortably in the end. Yeah, Spain to go through.
I mean, on paper, I think this match should be quite a tough match and quite a close game. But I do think that in over the last few years, I think Spain has been very much on an upward trajectory, whereas I think Croatia are going in the opposite direction. I think that Spain are going to. I think it'll be quite a slow game to begin with, but I think in the end, Spain are going to progress quite comfortably with a 2-0 win.
Yeah, if a miracle were to happen in this next game, Spain would be moving on to Los Angeles, and that would definitely spell the end of the road for a team I care about. But Spain definitely advanced here against Croatia. It may be close, but I feel like Spain will be in a controlled close scenario, similar to how they won games in the 2010 World Cup. Maybe not all 1-0s, but they won't feel too threatened by this version of Croatia. And then, James, you have the next matchup to introduce.
Right then, this will be a tasty one, won't it? Right, so we've got one of the host nations again, the United States of America versus Belgium in Seattle. Now then, so the USA, obviously with the home support, they're going to be. I'm sure that they're going to be going into this game quite nervous, and who can blame them with opponents like Belgium. I do think that this could be a game which goes to extra time. I think that Belgium are going to eventually have the edge, but I don't think the US are going to let them have it easy. I reckon in the end, this will be the end of the road for the USA, but I don't think it. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win to Belgium after extra time.
Yeah, I'm not biased, so as much as I'd love to say the USA beat Belgium, we literally saw USA play Belgium in March, and USA got off to a lead, but they ran out of gas in the second half. And I think that's where the USA still find themselves coming up short against the best teams in the world, that against teams that are more talented, have more depth, and more experience in closing out games, they are going to adapt if the USA gets a lead. Whereas if the USA falls early, like they did against Belgium in extra time in 2014, like they did against Ghana twice, once in regulation, once in extra time in 2010, they collapse. There's going to be a lot of pressure for the USA to advance beyond this point, but I don't think that pressure is founded. Like, if you look at the maps to get to the quarterfinals, this is USA winning the group, and they're still finding themselves against Belgium in the round of 16, and sometimes them's the breaks. So I think they'll go out swinging. They'll lose 2-1. I'd say Weston McKennie gets a goal for the USA, but Doku and Lukaku will each score, and that'll be it for this host nation.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like in the overall group stages that sometimes it's better finishing second than first. It was fortunate for England last World Cup because they could have had the most horrid of fixtures, but because certain teams finished where they did and they wasn't expected to, they had a bit of an easier run. So, but unfortunately for USA finding themselves against Belgium, yes, it's not the best Belgium side that we had maybe 10 or so years ago, but I do think Belgium will have enough to beat the United States, even though they're the home nation. But I am in agreement. I do think this will go down to the right at the end. It could go to penalties. So, and I think Belgium will have it, and they'll. But it's gonna be nervy for both ends. Like Belgium want to upset America on home soil, but at the same time, they're not going to be America going to make it so uncomfortable for Belgium. So it's going to be so even, I think, this game. But I Belgium should go through, but I wouldn't be surprised if America do cause upset.
Yep. Best case scenario, maybe this convinces Lukaku and Kevin De Bruyne to come to Major League Soccer after this. Uh, In the event that USA did finish second, it would be a similar, if not worse, fate. They would have to face Argentina in the round of 16. So it doesn't make a huge difference whatsoever. In most scenarios, I think this is where it ends for the USA. But in 1994, they lost just 1-0 to the eventual winners, Brazil, and that helped spark more interest in US soccer. So if we lose valiantly against a team like Belgium, I think that that could still be a net positive for growing the sport in the United States.
I think the US could also be quite proud of a round of 16 finish at a World Cup because, there are from that point onwards, the opposition is really tough. Um, and yeah, so I don't think that could be I don't think that'll be hard to I think they'll give themselves a pat on the back for that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good result. And I think it just speaks to the mindset of a lot of American supporters that we're used to being really good at a lot of different sports. Granted, a good chunk of those sports we had a leg up in, whether it be basketball or even in women's football. The United States were among the first nations to really uh, professionalize women's football. But in any case, now we go opposite coast to New York. We have Brazil versus Senegal. Senegal is now one of two remaining teams outside of South America or Europe left in this exercise. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll see, unless you two surprise me, we won't see an African team make it to the round of 16 because I think in New York, there's going to be some good support for the Senegalese, but even more support for the Brazilians. And Brazil have a bit more experience at the stage. I think Brazil will advance. It will be 3-1 Brazil.
Yeah, I think with this game, it would be nice to see Senegal progress to a later stage of a World Cup, and they've definitely got them in it to do it. I think they're just a bit unlucky in the draw with the draw with this in this instance. I think Brazil in this tournament are actually going to be an improvement on their previous years and actually could be one of the favourites to win it. I think a key factor in this is going to be the fact that a manager like Carlo Ancelotti, he's one of those very few managers in world football who is able to motivate the big egos. And I think that that's going to be a huge advantage to them. So I think although Senegal are not going to make it easy, I think Brazil will be progressing to the quarterfinals, and that, in my Score prediction, it's going to be a 3-1 win to Brazil over 90 minutes.
Yeah, we've got to remember Brazil have been terrible for years in World Cup competitions. And we do remember the horrific game against Germany in their own backyard. So I do think, though, I agree with James. I do think they will be much improved. Their team selection is questionable in some areas, but I think they have enough. As been a neutral for this game, well, not even a neutral because the winners could potentially face England if we all decide they go through. So Senegal, we hope you win, but for this exercise, Brazil are through.
All right, so we're down to three games left in the round of 16. Mason will introduce the next game, followed by James and myself.
So in in a traditional sense, for this exercise and for what could happen. For me and myself, James will probably it will be an avoidance. This game does not happen because for UK time, this game will take place at 1 o'clock, going into Monday morning. So for people who need to be up and go to work, etc., it's going to be very difficult if this goes to penalties because 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, even 5 o'clock in the morning for us. So we don't want this game to happen realistically. Most people don't, but everyone will stay up for it anyway. But um, I do think England will go through, but I don't know. I really don't know on this game because it's in Mexico City. It's difficult, and Mexico are hard. So I think this goes to extra time and penalties, and England could go out. But I feel I'm gonna say England go and win.
Yeah, England have some not so great memories of a World Cup in Mexico. We don't have to go into details too much. But again, this is an opportunity that I could be biased with my Mexican roots and say Mexico advance here. But yeah, as much as there's going to be factors in Mexico's favor with the humidity, the altitude, and of course the home support, I think the gap in quality is going to show up here. Um, this is a good England side, and I think that this generation of England players, I think post the Rooney, Lampard, Gerrard days, that there's less egos and there's more of a point to prove. Like they feel like they've been written off because of the previous generation, but now there's more of a collective spirit. Whereas I think with Mexico, I think that because they failed to get out of the group in the last World Cup, that they're still trying to regain their potential. And there is a chance that they could win this game, but I wouldn't put money on it. I'd pick England to advance.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very difficult game for England, particularly with the home support playing against Mexico in Mexico City, um, is going to be challenging. Um, And that's not just because of the climate, but also because, like I said, with the support, um, it's going to be quite tasty. And I think that Mexico are going to make it very, 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 very difficult for England. They're going to throw everything at this. But I think that this is going to be a late winner for England. I'm going to say that this will be a 2-1 win to England over extra time. And I would suggest in this game, I think the way that England would need to win this game is to be very conservative with their energy and to then go in for the kill later on. I think once there's a few tied Mexican legs.
Yeah, because as much as the Mexican players have more experience playing in altitude, I mean, Estadio Azteca hosts Club America, which is one of the most successful Mexican clubs out there. It doesn't make playing in altitude any easier. So it's going to be a difficult game for both teams. And that could also advantage England because they do have more depth than Mexico. But that will eliminate the non-European and South American teams. One of two South American teams left in the competition will be in your next fixture, James.
Yes, we have Argentina and Turkey next in Atlanta. So again, with Argentina, I think they're a well-oiled engine. They're a very, very balanced group of players, um, defensively and offensively. I think Turkey are a very exciting up and coming team, but I think Argentina on the whole are just going to have too much. I don't think this will be a clean sheet. I think Turkey is still going to find a goal with the talent that they have with Arda Güler and Yildiz, but I'm going to say that this will be a 3-1 win to Argentina in 90 minutes comfortably.
Yeah, so in this one, I think Argentina will go through as well. I feel like that yeah, I like James, a comfortable win for them.
Yeah, not too much for me to add there. I think this will be a game where even in defeat, this will raise the profile more so of a Kenyan Yildiz than an Arda Güler because, yeah, Güler is a young, promising star, but he's already at Real Madrid. There's not too much more profile to raise than Real Madrid. Of course, the World Cup will help that, but this will be a game where Turkey will announce themselves as a strong team, but they'll fall to a stronger team, and Argentina will advance. And then lastly, in Vancouver, this will be the last game that either Canada or Mexico hosts at the World Cup. This is a showdown highlighted by Holland versus Ronaldo. It'll be Norway versus Portugal. And I will turn it over to Mason.
So this game is going to be a very different game. It's going to be very competitive. I do think it's going to be very difficult for both teams in different ways. But I think Norway's journey isn't done here. I think this is where we get a cup upset in the World Cup, and I do think Norway will progress here. I think it could go to penalties in extra time, but it could also be done in the 90 minutes. Um, yeah, I think this is as far as Portugal get. So I'm going for Norway to go through.
That's an interesting one. I think the thing with Norway is that I think very similarly with um, I think Sweden we talked about earlier is that I mean we don't know a great deal about their side other than their attacking players like Odegaard, Haaland, Sorloth, and Jorgen Strand Larsen. They are, I think, a team that are going to be playing quite. I would expect maybe quite a counter-attacking game. I would expect Portugal to have most of the ball in this game with the midfield that they have, and they will look to wear down the Norwegians. But I think you're going to have a serious threat with Erling Haaland on the counter-attack um, if uh, if Norway can unlock that and they have the compactness and the defensive stability to be able to hold back Portugal. I think Norway are going to make it very interesting, but I think in the end, Portugal will have too much for them. I do think, however, this is going to be quite a high scoring game. I am going to go for a 4-2 win to Portugal because, again, I think Portugal are just going to have way too much and this could overwhelm Norway's defence. Um, and with Haaland and Sorloth, Odegaard, all the attacking players that Norwegian have, I think they'll have enough to break through the Portuguese defence, but it's not going to be enough. So I think, although this is a very respectable effort from the Norwegians to get to the round of 16, I think their journey ends here.
I think it would be asking a lot for Norway in their first World Cup in decades to go beyond this point. I think most scenarios that have Norway as a quarterfinalist have them finishing second in their group. So, of course, when you finish third, you're going to have a tougher path, and that's what's transpired here. I look at that midfield, and I think as good as Sanderberg has been for Fulham, you're going up against two-thirds of the PSG Champions League winning midfield. So, uh, good run for Norway, Portugal to advance. And that will conclude the round of 16. And usually that's how it's kind of gone in these predictions that the round of 32, there's a few more coin toss matchups, but the round of 16 has a couple of those, and then the rest are a bit more straightforward with the way that the bracket goes. But I think that goes out the window in the quarterfinals because we're going to begin with Mason. Mason will lead us with France versus Netherlands in Boston. But then after that, we have Spain versus Belgium in Los Angeles. Brazil versus England in Miami, and then Argentina versus Portugal in Kansas City. I know we can't wait to get to that one, but we'll start with France versus Netherlands, Mason.
I think France versus Netherlands is going to be very. Uh, it's tough to say, really. I mean, from seeing for the World Cup, Holland's performances and results, and like losing to teams that you don't think that they're going to lose to. And for a while, they had their days like with the Iron Robin, Wesley Sneijder. I think that was Holland's prime to actually winning a World Cup. But unfortunately, now their team just isn't as good as it was. So I feel like their always aim is to get this far. I think Holland, and they went a while for maybe not even getting in the World Cup, a bit like Italy had. So I do think France is going to have far too much. Kylian Mbappe is going to be on the score sheet again, and the team's very good. Um, One of the favourites to win the tournament as well, France. So yeah, I'm going to say France to progress.
Yeah, one of the things that's always impressed me about France is that over the last few years with the squads that they've selected, I mean, they look very they I would say that they look very um rich in
Depth.
terms of the depth that they have. And it's quite hard for a manager to get the best out of the squad that they have because they're spoiled for choice, so they haven't quite found a way to make it click. Didier Deschamps, every single tournament, has found a way, maybe other than the Euros when they crashed out against Switzerland in the penalty shootout, he's always found a way to make France click. Even if on paper the like the team selections that he does looks a bit questionable. I remember in the last World Cup in 2022, it was the first time where a lot of us got to know Randall Kolo and Marcus Thuram because of the fact that they were very they weren't well known prior to that, but in that French team, it clicked, it worked well. The combinations with Mbappe and with their midfield was brilliant. Um, and I think that we're going to see much of the same again. So I think that although the Netherlands have got a much better team this year than perhaps over the last few years, I think France will have too much for them. I'm going to go for a convincing 3-1 win to France in this game.
So for these first two quarterfinals, I think these are the two where there's a bit more of a gap. The next two after are the ones where I think it's going to be very difficult. But I think France will find a way to beat the Netherlands. I think the Netherlands have done well to get this far because I see some scenarios where they crash out earlier than this. But yeah, if they lose to France, I think that. I'm not sure if that's going to be a net positive or not, but it'll probably be like, okay, well, Coman's job is safe because they lost to France. So France to advance to the semifinals then. You're up, James.
Okay, so the next quarterfinal, we've got Spain versus Belgium in Los Angeles. Now, I think this is where the journey ends for Belgium, and this isn't because of the fact that I don't think that they're going to be a good match for Spain. I think that they're still going to make it difficult for them, but I do think that Spain are one of those teams that have just progressively got better and are on an upward trajectory over the last few years. I think that they've got a very good manager. I think that they are very well drilled, um, and they're efficient, quite frankly. So I think that. Um, Being the European champions, I think they're just going to have too much for Belgium in the end. So I'm going to say a again same scoreline. I reckon it's going to be a 3-1 win to Spain.
It's such a luxury for Spain to have Rodri leading the midfield and attack and just calming everything down and allowing the more creative players in front of him, Pedri's, Gavi's, Lamine Yamal, to work their magic. If Belgium were to pull this off, this would be the biggest result for Belgium since, and it may even be bigger than their win against Brazil in the quarterfinals in 2018. And that led to Belgium's best ever finish at the World Cup. They finished third. So there is a possibility for Belgium to make some history, but I think we're setting up a collision course between France versus Spain in the semifinal.
Yeah, I don't see a world where Spain don't probably win this tournament. I feel like they will. So I think it's not like you say. It doesn't matter who the opposition is here. I think whoever's there is going to lose at this stage in the tournament. If Spain would lose, it would be before now. It would be an early upset, which I'm sure all of us hope, because it would be nice for Spain to go out early on. But yeah, it's a pretty easy one to say.
All right. And I think for me, at least, that's the last possible matchup where I see a clear winner. I think from now on, it's just going to be splitting hairs. It's going to be fine margins. And that starts here in Miami. Slightly less, actually, very less mountainous than Mexico City, but just as humid for England, unfortunately. But it's going to be Brazil versus England. And well, I'll pass it over to you, Mason.
So I can't actually remember the last time England actually faced Brazil in a World Cup. Um, and certainly since I've been alive, yeah, I'd been two. So going by 2002, the last time we faced them. So I do think this is going to be a very difficult game, and I'm actually really happy we got Brazil. As much as a lot of us don't like it, but it's nice to see teams that you don't actually play against all the time, like the Panamas, like that. But I think it's going to be very difficult. I do think it's going to be a difficult game. Um, if we had a Gareth Southgate, I'd probably say it's a loss. But we've got Thomas Tuchel, who's a bit more equipped probably for these type of games, tournament football. So I am going to go for an England win, and I do think it's going to go to extra time, potentially penalties, and we've brought players across for penalties as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a win, but it's going to be a very nerve-wracking game, and we're going to be. It could go either way this game.
I think I'll go next because I'll make things a little harder for James. I think history repeats itself. I don't think it's going to be quite Ronaldinho's goal over David Seaman, but I think that there's a few more factors going Brazil's way than England. I think both Brazil and England are the winners of the controversial World Cup selections among the favorites, but I think somehow, some way, I see more scenarios where Brazil win than England. I think that Neymar being injured, I don't think it's going to hurt them that much, Brazil, because they're used to playing without Neymar, because Neymar hadn't played that much in this World Cup cycle until he was recently recalled. If anything were to happen to a key player for England, or there's a suspension, or they have to make a sub, like in the last Euros, where there was a scenario where they subbed out Harry Kane, that could spell doom for England. I think that this will be the first big test. With all due respect to Croatia, with all due respect to the to Mexico even, this will be the biggest test for England. Usually when there's that difficulty spike from one match to another rather than a clean progression, that's where I think the nerves set in for England. So I'll make it a 1-1 tie. James has the deciding vote.
Thanks, Ivan. Right, so this game can go one of two very different ways, and I think that first of all, I just want to quickly pick up on your point about Neymar's injury. I also agree that that doesn't really hurt Brazil very much. I actually think it was. I think they might look back on this actually in terms of not picking João Pedro. The one thing that Brazil have already got lots of, and they don't need any more of, is like the superstar wingers, the creative players. They've got that in abundance. They don't need any more of that. They do need more players who will do a bit of the dirty work as well. And that's one thing that I've always liked about João Pedro, especially with the way he's been at Chelsea, is that his off the ball work is phenomenal. He will not stop running when out of possession, and that's the sort of player which I think that Brazil perhaps might be missing. Now, the problem is that I think England's defense are not a matchup for Brazil's attack. So the only way that I think that England progress in this game is if Tuchel sets them up in a way where he can prevent Brazil from getting into the final third. He needs to win the midfield battles, maybe even press hard to stop them getting out of their own half. England are going to have to suffocate them further up the pitch before they get to the ball to the likes of Vinny Jr. or Rodrigo or any of their key players. I think the only way England win this is probably via a penalty shootout. I think it will be a close game. I think it has got extra time written all over it. But I think it's going to be a Brazil win. I think they're just going to edge it 2-1. And I think, unfortunately, although it's bitter for England and for myself and Mason, I just think that Brazil are just going to have that little bit too much. I think if England had that William Saliba level centre back in the team, I would have given England a much better chance for sure.
It might still be someday Mark Gahey, but I think the drama and the unexpected staying at Crystal Palace for another 6 months, ending up at Manchester City versus Liverpool, I think that kind of dims that reputation just a little bit. He's still probably the best center back England have. Although I think Ezri Konsa is underrated as well. Yeah, you just can't say that either of them are quite, Gabriel or William Saliba for Arsenal. And that's kind of the irony sometimes with Premier League champions that you look at them and you see, yeah, there's some England quality level players there, but oftentimes some of the best players aren't English. So you can't use that as an example of yeah, Premier League might be the best league. Doesn't translate to the national team. So that will bring us to the last quarter final and the one that many people will have circled in their calendars if this happens, Mason.
Yeah, so we've got Argentina versus Portugal, and this game's going to be like one of the best games because potential last World Cups for Messi and Ronaldo. So it's going to be a game, a most beloved game for every fan of football, really. So it could go one of two ways. I don't think there's a favourite here. I really don't. I feel like it's so even, and it could go either way. Um, but I do think Portugal will. I think Portugal will win because of their midfield. Really, I think their midfield helps them a lot in this World Cup. Argentina, they have some good players too, but I do think Portugal will have enough. And they'll want to give that Ronaldo, try and give him that World Cup, as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go for Portugal to win.
Yeah, I think with this game, I think this one again, there's another one that could go either way, and nobody would really mind if it did. Um, and I think that for Argentina, although as the reigning champions, they have a lot, they're going to have some confidence coming into this tournament. I think Portugal are one of the teams that have probably progressed the most between the last World Cup to this one. Their midfield is one of the strongest, probably in the tournament, if not the strongest. Um, Defensively, they've improved as well. Nuno Mendes arrive at left back. You've got Ruben Diaz at centre back, amongst many other um, well recognisable defenders. So and goalkeeper Diego Costa. I think that again, as long as they operate as a team and don't build their play around Ronaldo, I think that this time Portugal will have Ronaldo's team will have the edge over Messi's, and I think that Portugal will progress in this game. I do think it will be quite high scoring. I'm going to go 3-2 win for Portugal.
Yeah. Portugal will have the edge in terms of overall squad talent, although Argentina, I don't think they're that far off, even if they still have a lot of that old guard from the 2022 World Cup. And even then, at that point, people were looking at the list of clubs that those teams were represented. There was a lot of River Plate, Boca Juniors, Sevilla, so not quite lighting up all the Inter players, all the Real Madrid, Barcelona, what have you. But I probably would have given my vote to Argentina. I just feel like maybe I'm just thinking too much into the Messi and Ronaldo of it all, but I see Messi getting the last laugh, but I could also see Portugal just having the better team. And oftentimes, once a showdown between two headliners, you look at the supporting players that they're stars in their own right, especially in Portugal's case. So, yeah, it's not a disservice that Portugal advances. I could definitely see it happening. And that sets up our semifinals. James, would you like to introduce the first one?
Yes, I will. And again, like we said before, I think this is the time where it can go either way. So in Dallas, they are hosting France versus Spain in the first semi-final. Now, I actually think, yeah, we're getting to the point now where we're talking about the four, I reckon the four hot favourites to win the tournament before we started this process. But I actually believe that in this instance, that although Spain are going to be a very well organised team, I do think that France are just going to get the edge in this. Again, I think it's going to be quite a high scoring game. I think it's going to be like the 4-2 win to France. Spain won't make it easy, but yeah, I think that defensively France are stronger. I'd say maybe Spain have the stronger midfield, but I think that going forward, France are just going to be a bit more ruthless in attack, and I think that ultimately that will have them progress to the final for a third time in a row.
Okay.
Um, I'll go next here. So, yeah, the reasons for France to beat Spain are very sound. And I've gone back and forth between these two. Um, with Spain, a lot depends on how they manage Lamine Yamal, because I think they've learned their lesson with both Yamal and with Pedri. That as fantastic as both those players are, and as young as they are, so you may be prone to thinking they can play and soak up more minutes. But especially with modern football, you still have to be very careful with your young players. You can't play them all the time. Fortunately, Spain will have a group where they do not have to play Lamine Yamal and Pedri all 270 of those minutes to win that group, particularly in those games against Saudi Arabia and Cape Verde. So a lot depends on how they manage their squad because they're going to have to manage it a little bit more than France. And then the inverse is true for France, that they have an abundance of attacking talent, but they can't all be on the pitch at the same time. So Spain have the depth in midfield with Rodri providing some cover for that back line. Whoever is in goal for Spain, whether it's David Raya, hopefully, I think that would be my first choice, but even Joan Garcia and Unai Simon in a Spanish jersey, those are all fantastic options for Spain. They're going to stop some key shots from France. I think that I see a little bit of Spain repeating history with they went on to the final after winning a European championship. My vote is for Spain. So Mason, you get the deciding vote.
So I think this game is going to be very difficult and very hard for both teams. Um, Kylian Mbappe is going to be really hard for Spain defenders. Um, but I think Spain should have the edge, but France should have the edge as well. So it's going to be very hard. It's going to be like Argentina versus Portugal. You can't decide it. And these two, I would say France and Spain are the two that are favourites going into the tournament. I would say either one of them should win the tournament, but I do think this is where it goes for France and Spain. I think are going to get through. I'm going to go for Spain.
Well done. Yeah. France are a very good team. They're definitely worthy of beating Spain, even if that's not how I voted. Yeah, France on to the final, and it would be a historic run if they do make it to yet another World Cup final. But who is going to meet them there in New York? Technically New Jersey, but we'll say New York. Um, Brazil versus Portugal in Atlanta. So I will go to James first for this one.
Oh, this is going to be a really, really hard one. I did think that Brazil were going to be one of. Do you know what? I think if Brazil had picked João Pedro to go to the World Cup, I would have given them a much better chance, quite honestly, for reasons I explained earlier. But I do think that in I think that what we were talking about fine margins earlier. I think that this is where Portugal could have the edge. Um, Brazil is a very superstar rich team, and I think that Portugal have got that, but they've also got the players to do the dirty work at the same time. I think Portugal are a far, far, far more well balanced team in comparison. Um, I think there is going to be fireworks at this game. I think it's going to be a thriller, but I think Portugal in the end will just edge it. I'm actually going to say 3-2 to Portugal.
Go ahead, Mason.
Um, this is going to be a very difficult game. Like Brazil are very good, Portugal are very good. Otherwise they wouldn't have got this far. But as you both know, I probably wouldn't have had Brazil to go this far anyway. It's just because I got outvoted. So England would be it, but or even Scotland. But yeah, I don't see Brazil. I mean, I don't see them getting this far anyway. But I do. Funny enough, I don't see Portugal getting this far either. So for me, I would have put if it was like was an overall decision, neither of these teams probably would have got to this stage, in my opinion. But out of these two teams, I would say Portugal to go through.
I'll make it Portugal unanimous as well. I think Portugal have less glaring holes in their roster, which, based on population, Portugal has like a twelfth of the population of Brazil. So that is an achievement in and of itself. But yeah, this might be the most talented group of Portuguese players ever. I know we said this when they lifted the Euros in 2016, even if they underperformed in the group stage. But yeah, maybe 2006, maybe 1966. Obviously, that would be a little far back for us to really know for sure. But yeah, this could be the team that gets Portugal to their first ever World Cup final. We do have a little bit of business to take care of. The third place match between Spain versus Brazil. I think we can just agree Spain third.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, yes. Yeah, I think Spain are the more complete sides, and I think that um, yeah, I think it'll be a well-deserved third place for them.
All right, so Spain to get the bronze in Miami, and that sets up an all-European podium. So at MetLife Stadium, if by FIFA to be referred to as New York, New Jersey Stadium, but really it's MetLife Stadium. It
I
will
did
be
laugh at that last year at the Club World Cup where it said New York, New Jersey in the stadium. I'm just like, it's New Jersey. Just
Yes, yeah, we have two NFL teams that are named New York that play in New Jersey. It's very funny. We're a very funny country. But in any case, you'll be pleased to know that there'll actually be real grass for all the World Cup games. In NFL, it's a very uh, well-known fact that for the turf, at least one injury a game happens in that. And granted, American football is a very injury-prone sport to begin with, but even still. But in any case, this was chosen to be the final because it's in the United States. Sorry, Azteca. I would have picked the Azteca myself. But we can't complain about the teams that made it this far. France versus Portugal. And why don't we start with Mason and then James and then myself?
I think I think it's just written in the stars for Portugal to win this one. Because I just think so. I think they deserve it. They have. I don't know. when they last won the World Cup, but
They've never won it.
they never won the World Cup. So there you go, and that's another reason for saying that they have like France have won it loads of times, haven't they? Especially after the last um, couple of World Cups, they've done really well in them. Um, so they're more recent, and I think they'll both be up for it. But my vote's going for Portugal.
Right, okay. So this will be a very, very, very exciting game. I think there'll be a lot of anticipation and the possibility that Cristiano Ronaldo could be getting his first World Cup in probably his last World Cup after Messi lifted his World Cup. Um, However, my thinking behind this game is that there'll be a lot of expectation on Portugal, but I see this game going to extra time. I think it'll be a high scoring thriller, and I think the longer the game goes on, with the depth that France have, the more likely they become to win. And I think that France are going to be a team which are going to have a very, very potent counter-attacking option um, in their team with players like Doué, um, Mbappe, um, Barcola, all of those exciting attackers, which you've seen also from PSG too. So if France can contain Portugal, I think that they just get the edge, and for that reason, I'm going to say that France will win the final, and it will be a 2-1 victory to France after extra time.
All right then. So, I mean, just up and down these lineups, incredible players. Diego Costa, if Portugal make the final, he will not play another game in the Liga de Portugal until the twilight of his career. I think that's for certain. Mike Maignan, similarly, he has to get out of AC Milan after this World Cup. The defense is incredible for both these teams. A down year for Ruben Diaz, he's still Ruben Diaz, and Mensch as well. And of course, William Saliba, a big concern is how fit he will be at the start. But again, I think France could probably get away with not playing him in every game in the group. Looking at you, Iraq. And then the midfield is definitely the edge for Portugal, although France have their talented players too. I think this could be an interesting one because Warren Zaire-Emery, he knows how to counter Joao Neves and Vitinha from their time at PSG together. But Adrien Rabiot is a mercurial figure. N'Golo Kante, he has a motor on him even at this stage of his career. And then that leaves the attack. Um, I think France have the more balanced attack than Portugal. I think Rafael Leao, what version of him will show up? Um, Gonçalo Ramos, he is a bit part player for PSG behind a lot of the French players and Kvisha Kvaratskhelia. Um, and then yeah, so I think it's got to be France. I think France win their third World Cup. They'll tie Argentina with three each, and they'll just be one behind Germany and Italy and two behind Brazil. So there we have it. So it was a very difficult decision there, but we have France as your 2026 World Cup. Final thoughts, James Mason?
Um, I think yeah, I think that's they were one of the favourites, wasn't they? I think we'll thought France, Spain, probably one of them two. Like most of those teams could have been any of them. It really could have, but I don't know about you guys, but I hope France don't win it.
Uh, I'm not such a I know for the English it should be a there is this idea that England and France are rivals. I don't really see it that way anymore. And likewise with Germany, it's very distant past um, events. It's not a thing for me. The I did actually have France to win the tournament before we did this exercise. I didn't have it exactly the same route, but I do ultimately think that at the end of the day, France, with the depth that they have and the variety of players that they have in attack, midfield, defense, and also high quality options as well. There's just so much that you can do with that team. It'll be up to Didier Deschamps with how they set up, but I don't feel like France are restricted really in any way, shape, or form. I think that they've got the play. One player that we haven't even talked about with France is Ryan Cherki, um, who will be um, who will probably be playing a key part as well if they need to bring him on to unlock the attack anymore. Um, that's um, that's going to be a that could be a key factor. They they have options everywhere in every position. They've got two to three world-class players in every position. So it's I think that is going to be an enormous expectation on them to do well. We shall see. But yeah, they are going into this World Cup, I think, quite rightly as one of the favourites.
Either of you know anybody traveling to North America for the World Cup? I know it's very expensive, so I understand if not.
Um, I,
I'm only going to one game.
I know someone going just for the environment, just to go in the city. I can't go to not going to the games because it's too expensive, but just going in the environment, going to maybe a few pubs, that kind of thing.
Which game are you going to, Ivan?
So the cheapest game that is in the San Francisco area is Jordan versus Algeria. And even still, for my wife and I, it was for two tickets, it was a multiple of hundreds of dollars. And it wasn't quite 1,000 near that, but it was tough, but we saved up. We knew that the World Cup was coming. And being locals, like we're driving to the games, so we don't have to pay for airfare or hotel, so that brings the costs a little down. But yeah, I am very disappointed in how expensive the World Cup is compared to the Champions League, compared to the Euros, compared to all these other tournaments that as much as they have priced certain fans out in Europe, I know there's a lot of issues with season tickets prices and prices in general for Premier League. It's dwarfed by the greed of this organization to think, oh yeah, because charge an arm and a leg for NFL tickets or playoff tickets for basketball, that we should do the same for the World Cup. Rich people in New York buying courtside tickets for a New York Knicks NBA Finals game is not the same as people traveling from England, Croatia, Ghana, and Panama for a group stage game. Like, there's just a very much not reading of the room when it came to the ticket prices, and it's alienated a lot of World Cup fans. It's alienated a lot of North American fans from being as engaged in the World Cup. So, as much as I feel like a good performance by the host nations, particularly Canada and the United States, can help galvanize the next step of growth of football in those countries where soccer is a fourth or fifth favorite sport, uh, there's a lot of things that have gone wrong with the World Cup, and we're kind of just hoping that the football on the pitch can outshine those negatives.
Yeah, yeah, I
I think
agree.
that's the one thing before each World Cup, though, is that it's like there's always a lot of talk behind the scenes. I mean, last time, if we go back to 2022 in Qatar, with all the talk that was going on, and like with what was the politics behind that World Cup, but then eventually the football does shine through, and hopefully, like that World Cup, people will just be able to enjoy the football uh, with this World Cup, and there'll be great games shaping up just as we've gone through.
Yeah, yeah. Just before we go, like it's really good. Like there's games throughout the night. Some days over here, like for our time, we've got like games at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the evening, 8 o'clock. So there's not really any early like lunchtime games for us, but then most likely in the night. and at night time. So got to stay up if you want to watch them all.
Yeah. Some of the pubs might be closed.
Yeah, I think they keep the England one up though, when they're
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I understand that's the time we have for today. I think anyone for listening and watching all the way through. I thank you two for doing this, and it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Likewise, Ivan, and and I hope we get to do this again very soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us, Mason.
Thank you.